There's been so many times in my life, where I've opened up to somebody and they've opened up to me, but there's some kind of shadow aspect, some kind of like they have their own complex, their own wounds and shit that they haven't worked through. And I basically opened up myself to get fucked with.
With social dominance, like they're not realizing that the external thing is just the projection of the internal feeling, essentially. So that's why that can be a whole mess, because they're not relating to you. They're relating to the thing that they're trying to get or push away, essentially.
The Big Hormone Enneagram.
I'm John Lekovich, 415, sexual self-pres, 458 Trifix.
I'm David Gray, self-pres sexual, 9 with 1 wing, 974 Trifix.
What up, it's Emeka. I'm an 8-wing-7, sexual self-pres with 854 fixes.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I'm a 3-wing-4, self-pres-social, 369 Trifix.
Hi, I'm Alexandra. I'm a social self-preservation 9-wing-1, 963 Trifix.
If you like or hate us, make sure you go like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and make sure you leave us a review.
Welcome to Big Hormone Enneagram. I don't have no idea when this is going to be released relative to other episodes because we do it all out of order.
Yeah.
Probably 3 weeks.
Yeah.
All right. So, been working on stuff with my Egypt friends, and trip might be more expensive than we thought because price has been going up.
Okay.
So maybe like 4,500, something in that area. But I'll talk more about what that will include and all that kind of shit. But just putting that out there for people to think about. Please buy my book. Please rate and review my book. And that's all I can think about for now.
DAA, Dark Arts Academy. You want to become dangerously perceptive and skilled at seeing the types clearly. We've been doing classes on the sexual instinct. A bunch of series on the sexual instinct. We just did the head center and the heart center, heart center was fucking hilarious. We had Madonna and what was that two that we had?
Jennifer Tilly, Meg Tilly.
Oh my God, she's a caricature.
She is.
And we just did a class on Vincent Gallo, who's also a really insane, hilarious person. Mm-hmm. So yeah, check it out at enneagrammer.com, and if you are still stuck on your typing, you can get typed by us up there as well. We've got some discounts in our members area and the Discord.
All right. Hello. I am Alexandra. My website is Saturn Ruled 9. Come for all your astrology needs. I'm also covering The Bachelorette through a reality TV perspective and lens, so you can join in on that conversation. It's been pretty fun.
It's a very important conversation.
Very important.
Very important conversation.
I'll say that like the videos are really fucking good. Like, and they're
really,
funny,
really good.
Yeah.
And super well edited.
Well edited, but also like her insights are like really great. And so she's really able to take people's conflicts and break down like all the weird dynamics that are happening better than I've seen anybody be able to do. And so like, I mean, I'll be painting or something like this, and I'll hear her editing her own video, and I'll be laughing or like hearing the good points she's making or something like that. And so that's really cool. So like a lot of people have been watching them that don't even watch these shows, and they've been like, maybe I should watch Bachelorette now or something. So check them out.
Yes.
I'm one of those people. I think you might break me of my 20-year boycott of the franchise.
Somehow she made the Bachelorette
I'm
interesting
growing
and
more
deep.
powerful.
You did the impossible.
Bringing society down one person at a time.
I know. Just sucking us into the Bachelorette. Who brought you here? Alexandra did.
That's right. I mean, watching these kind of dynamics, like, this is not to sound dramatic, but watching those kinds of dynamics helps me learn the Enneagram. You see the patterns so loudly and so clearly, and then just like the more practiced you get, the more you kind of can't escape being able to see those patterns, and then you're able to apply it to yourself and to other people, and then it's just as clear as day. So yeah, that's been fun. Come join me. It's fun. I love to talk about it. And yes. And then the next thing is Josh Levine and I from What It's Like to Be You. and I are doing an attachment support group through theenneagramschool.com. That's going to start on August 22nd. And this is going to be a support group specifically for attachment types. It's very limited capacity. And what we're going to be doing is helping attachment types see their patterns. There's going to be a lot of conversation and a lot of like intimate holding with this, with the aim to help you recalibrate yourself and be able to kind of go back out into the world with a better handle on your own location. So that's going to be really powerful stuff. It starts on August 22nd, and you can sign up through theenneagramschool.com. David Gray.
David Gray. I am David Gray. Let's see. Continue to believe in my magic powers and my wisdom, and support me in any way that you can. Yeah, and there'll be more
Instinct booklet. Do you still sell the cards, the instinct cards?
Or
Trifix booklet.
The Trifix booklet still available on my site, as well as my site is what is it?
Anyasite.com.
Anyasite.com. Yeah, I'm still learning, and Enneagrammer.com. And there's other digital products. I don't have any more of the physical copies of the instinct cards, but I've got the digital. So, yeah.
And then we have guests with us today, and I'm going to introduce them, but I'm also going to announce that Uncle Magic begins. Want to congratulate my sister Michaela and her husband Will. They don't listen, but my sister Lucy listens. So I have a new niece. Her name is Margot Elizabeth, and I am big on the uncle power right now. Nice. So first time uncle. So we got Kristen and Ikram. Kristen, you want to plug your little podcast or whatever?
Sure. It's Insomnia. Go find it wherever you listen to podcasts. We talk about dreams and the Enneagram, and we're on the social instinct, coincidentally.
What does that mean, though? Like, that you're on the social instinct with dreams?
Like that's what we're discovering, what the archetype of social is, what it might feel like being projected out onto people, which show up as figures in dreams, but then also like the inner sense, getting in touch with the inner sense of the instinct.
You guys are doing these like the series on each of the instincts, and don't you do kind of like a dream incubation thing where each of you set the intention to dream about a given instinct, and then you do some deep dives into it based off of the dreams?
Yeah, we like kind of split up where we look at like symbols of the instincts, like how they might show up in dreams. Then we start kind of looking at mythology, and then we go into like the actual dreams and hours. That includes hours, and sometimes I get examples from other people. So yeah, you get like the wide range of what the instinct would look like in that realm.
So we for people listening, we did a live pod like 2 weeks ago. I think it was released like a week ago, but this will probably be like a month or whatever from listening. And anyway, it was cool to see like we did like a whole context thing about all the Enneagram or big hormone nonsense, and how this dream podcast and the stuff they're coming up with is like the next shock point in this octave, and how that's just like this the next jumping off point into a whole other universe with the Enneagram. So it's like brand new, nobody else is doing anything like this, kind of cutting edge stuff. So very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. If I can make a slight like recommendation for anyone who's diving in, I think the most recent episode with Sammy was really fantastic, and I got a lot out of it. She was talking about her experience as a self-pressed social 9, and just listening to her speak made me understand the differentiation between self-pres and social. It was very, very good. Like the self-pres social and self-pres sexual are a lot more alike than I thought they were. Yeah.
Toxic Sammy, the most toxic one of our group.
Yeah.
Ikram, you've never been on the pod before, right?
Yes, I've never been on the pod. I don't really have anything to promote or plug, but just happy to be here, happy to be alive.
I think Ikram did
excited to talk to you guys.
Ikram did one question on one of the love.
Oh, that's right.
Oh yeah, I did do that. Yeah.
Say your type at least for everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'm typed a 7-wing 6, 9-wing 1, and then the 3-wing is debated, but I think 3-wing 2. And social sexual. And I've been typed since 2021, I believe.
So Ikram has loosened the ban on 7 fixes.
For real.
Seriously. She's the exception.
Yes.
It's still up for deliberation about whether I should be participating.
Yeah, we might just kick David off and have Ikram in place of him.
Yeah, his 7-6 makes up for all the other toxic 7s that we've gotten rid of.
I'll say for any listeners wondering about Ikram, she was interviewed by Josh Levine on his podcast.
Oh, yeah.
So go look out for that episode, which was really
Kristen
good.
was just released too.
Yes.
It was just released. Also amazing.
Yeah, I was just listening to it today. It's really good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, look what we have here today. We have Alexandra set up all ready to go, and Emeka just can't get it together.
Look at that. Problem no more. Did he just say shut up? You know what's kind of funny is Josh and I have hung out a couple times, and he told me while we were like reflecting on the trip, there was one point where he was, it just flew away. Hang on. Hang on.
All right, well, Alexandra has not redeemed herself.
Take it all back.
It'll come back. It'll come back.
9 to function.
That he was saying that it was like funny to watch my dynamic with Emeka because I've started to be like more argumentative with Emeka and how like our relationship is basically just like fighting all the time. But Josh said that I win a lot. So
a challenge.
How the tables have turned.
Hey, if you're fighting, I'm winning. That's what you don't understand.
You can't find your phone, man.
It's a 7-wing reframe.
If we're fighting,
changing all the rules.
I'm winning.
What do you mean I lost?
All right.
All right, so one of the things that we decided would be good to talk about is, well, I felt like the zone that we did in Chicago was like a very social zone, like social instinct. Like I feel like the one where I met Alexandra at was like, at least for me, a very sexual instinct.
Yeah, it was very, very flirty zone.
But I think the whole vibe was sexual instinct.
Yeah,
it was
the
very
whole vibe
like
was really flirty. Yeah.
it was like the conception of something. It had conception energy, you know, and it had getting outside of usual boundaries energy. It had all this kind of stuff. But this one was like really like, you know, we learned a lot about like, you know, Emeka and like your world. And I think all of us just like really felt we'd found something about like our people, quote unquote. And a lot of people were crying about it and whatever. And there was a lot of like just like easy connection and like one that didn't have to be propped up by words or anything like that. It was just vibes. And so, you know, and so knowing Alexandra as well as I do, and like all her sadness and sorrow and heartbreak around the social instinct and her shielding against that, and it seems like come up with a lot of people. And so, so we have these deplorable social types on with us to, you know, to talk. We talked a lot about like what it's like to live in a sexual blind world and that kind of a thing. And we've talked a lot, you know, on this podcast, of course, but, even though I don't think social is as much of a blind spot in our culture, it's still just as much wounding. So I don't know where to start, but that's kind of, there was a lot of like that, like, oh, this is like the zone was like, oh, this is what we're like wanting a lot of, and this is what we're missing a lot of, and it gave new like texture and language for like a longing that doesn't get a lot of serious examination.
Yeah. From the, I guess jumping off of that, from some of our conversations after the Zone 2, John, what I heard from you is that you were a little bit surprised to hear how much all of the social types and those people with activated social instincts also had these same kind of woundings. Like this was not just a blind spot neglect thing. It was a social dominant and social middle, kind of present loneliness too.
What were you guys' impressions, Kristen and Ikram? Did the zone like activate any sort of
Or were you just like, yeah, fuck it, that was fine. There's another weekend, check.
Yeah, I don't even know why I'm here
all the time.
She forgets our names.
I found it a really healing place to be because I think I have felt pretty close to people in a social sense, but it feels like something that has to be cultivated over years. And it also seems something very dangerous and like fleeting. You know what I mean? Like maybe I'll have that with one person. Like one thing that I said to Alexandra, and I think she said the same thing to me, is that it's so rare to be in a room full of like people that you deeply care about, like every single one. Like I really like you as a person, and I trust you, and I don't think that you're like there's like no ulterior motives or like judgment or I don't know, all the negative things that come with social. I think what people are reacting to is that like, yes, like we might have friendships and close relationships with our family members, but a lot of times there is that shadow of just like there's a lot of pain and shit that you have to go through before you even get to the kernel of the good stuff. And so I think Alexandra had a lot to say about that. Actually, we had a deep conversation about that during the trip, but that's what I was feeling. I was like, oh, I didn't even like there's nothing fucked up about this. There's nothing wrong, and I don't feel like people are judging me. I feel like I can be myself. And I also feel like I can know people very deeply, and it doesn't have to take years.
You used the word dangerous there, which is interesting to me, because social danger is kind of like, what the fuck? What do you mean, social danger? I mean, I kind of get it intellectually, but I mean, that sort of gets into the subject here of social suffering and pain. So, like, what is that, the potential for danger in social space?
I think I had a conversation with you after the trip, David, where I kind of expanded on this, but I think this is my like subjective view as a social type, but it's like I see a lot of lonely people or a lot of people who are wanting some deep communion with others, and you have to open up yourself to get that, right? There's been so many times in my life, where I've opened up to somebody and they've opened up to me, and I felt like, we got each other. But there's some kind of shadow aspect, some kind of like they have their own complex, their own wounds and shit that they haven't worked through. And I basically opened up myself to get fucked with, or like I think the word I used was like emotionally molested, which is very dramatic, whatever. But
Right.
that's so you feel scarred and you feel like I have to close up, and I have to give up on going into the world thinking that I can be with other people in a very deep way, because it's a fantasy and I'm actually just like getting fucked over and over again,
Yeah, I've always been very aware of the social dangers, and who knows if I just like came into the world with that kind of thing, or if it was like some kind of framing that came out of my family, or if it came from like my experience as, I don't know, as a person developing connections outside of family, because I definitely have a lot of experience with being, like socially fucked over, like you said. But yeah, I've always had a lot of anxiety in social spaces, especially new ones. Actually, especially all of them. But we'll start with the new ones, especially new ones, because I just never know when it's hard to tell when someone's actually being sincere. It's hard to know when someone isn't going to use this like connection and this bond and this like openness as like a bargaining chip to get somewhere else. I think it was like a couple of years ago now that we had someone come over under the guise of friendship, and then it turned out to be a catastrophe, and it turned out to be just like, and it turned out to just be some story for other people. So it's that kind of thing, kind of putting your openness and your, because I think as a social type, the way that I experience love is through the social instinct. And the way I think I'm going to get into contact with it most directly is through the social instinct. So when you open that up and then it just gets messed with, it feels like your heart is being messed with. And so you just learn to be really careful about it. You know, Game of Thrones, I think we mentioned that on one of these last episodes, but that's like, I don't know, it's kind of sad to say, but that's always been my sort of navigation when it comes to the social instinct. Is just like making sure that everybody's playing carefully. And so I think that going into this, and I said this on the live pod too, but I think going into this social space in Chicago when we all met up, and then realizing over and over again, just kind of taking inventory and finding that there was nothing to take inventory of. Like there's like, I don't have to watch this person. This person's not going to act out, Like, especially as a 9-2, like navigating the social harmony, especially as an FE dominant, that kind of stuff. Realizing there was nothing to be on guard about was like, now what? Now what do I do? What am I supposed to do? Just get what I want? That's not realistic. So yeah, that's my starting off point with that.
Speaking of social danger as a social blind, I think it's something that we've all had to really become more aware of, that it's really negatively affecting us. At least for me, after the last zone, I was really, really, really upset. And it's kind of like this waves of upsetness where you don't realize how upset you are that you've been violated in a way that you didn't look out for. And just to see how much you can be affected by the wrong people violating social boundaries and things like that. So experiencing that sort of pain because you're not anticipating it, it just raised the bar in terms of, all right, we can't really fuck around here. This is a really important social space for us. Let's really vet every single element of this. And so yeah, I'm really happy with the way things turned out, but that's the results of a lot of social pain from, social blinds kind of being cavalier about people.
Yeah. And one other thing I would add is that another aspect of the danger is that usually when you go out into society or whatever, when you commune with other people, there's like subjects that are taboo and you feel like fucked up for bringing up or whatever. And I felt like that was missing from the zone as well. Like there was nothing there was nothing that was super awkward to talk about. And if you were dealing with deep pain, which I think, a lot of people were at the zone, and just in life, everyone's dealing with a lot of deep pain. You were able to like, just get it off your chest and talk about it. And it wasn't this like, I don't know, it wasn't like fucked up or weird or culty like I thought it would be.
The truth comes out.
I'd be culty and you came anyway.
It's just cool. Yeah. I had my escape plan, don't worry.
Yeah, I like your term actually, emotional molestation, because with being social blind, it's this weird thing where on one hand you kind of don't trust social, at the same time like you're cynical about it and it's at an arm's length, but at the same time you're like unspecific about why, and also naive in a certain way. It's like you're not like, oh fuck all this stuff, you're just like, yeah, I don't have time for that, I don't like whatever, that seems like a hassle, seems like too much. But yeah, there's a way that, like, especially the last couple years, both through stuff related to this group as well as like in my personal life with friends and people that position themselves as mentors with me, that they they're just like sharks that turn on you and like really like fuck you over in ways that you're like, that only because I like had you somehow close to me in some way you could have done. And one of the things as a social blind, I'm always like, all right, so let's see how I put this. Like, all right, like, so with y'all, like, y'all are my friends, and so it's like I just want good stuff for y'all. And I mean, yeah, there's like, it's like a little bit more complicated. Every dynamic's got its layers and stuff, but basically, like, it's pretty fucking simple. It's like I got your back, you got mine. I have a hard time understanding, like, what the motive for the fucked up behavior is.
Right.
Because. Like, and I wrote down a list when you said, Ikram, emotional molestation. And I was like, I guess people want, like, validation and they want attention. And they also want to tear people down to lift themselves up.
they're like trying to work through all of their pain in the social sphere or the sexual sphere or whatever, like by creating a social situation that like makes them feel like everything. It makes them feel better about themselves, exactly like you said. Like if I can get you to look like a piece of shit, or if I can kind of break you down, whatever, I can trick myself into thinking that it was always going to happen that way.
One sense that I have is that, well, as a social blind, you don't understand what social is as a tool and a sword and a power that has specific, I don't know, moves you can do or something, or whatever, right? And you're just kind of completely naive to social power and action or something, and you just don't even, so you don't suspect it sort of around the corner or something.
I guess it's like with the sexual instinct, you know, John, you and I were aware of how an attraction dynamic and all the different layers, and you know, you can watch two people interacting and you can sort of tell like what they're going for or how they're trying to get polarity and tension, and so you're really aware of the attraction game. And it seems like with social types, it's like this sort of sensitivity that as social blinds we lack, of how much of a big deal it is to play this game, and there's sort of like layers and intricacies and different stances that you can take to sort of position yourself above or below someone else. And to us, it's like, who cares? I mean, we're all kind of like, you know, flatten the field, and we're like, it doesn't matter, but it really fucking matters, you know, to someone who's social first. And so that's kind of what catches me off guard. It's like, whoa, this is like so many layers deep on something that I didn't think was a big deal, but it is a huge deal.
Like, yeah, totally. And like, you know, thinking about like, to that point about tearing others down to feel better about yourself, like, and this is a sincere question, but like, have any of us any memories where they tore someone down and it made them feel good? You know what I mean? Or like made them feel better about ourselves? Like, I mean, revenge has felt good, but like actually just, I don't know. I just can't, like, it's a weird motive to connect to, because I see it all the time where people are kind of trying to undermine each other, but like,
well, I don't know. Maybe here's a shallow way to connect to it through sexual. It's like people who simply want to hook someone just so they can prove to themselves that they're attractive. Like sexual types doing that all the time. They're not even interested in the person, they're just interested in their interest. And so like the ego game that you can play with the sexual instinct, I can see that with socials. Like, I just want to prove to myself that I can position myself as a higher status than this person who actually has more status than me in this group. And so I see a lot of people who come to us who that may be a motivation for them, is to, okay, you're above me, but I'm going to make you beneath me in some kind of weird ego way.
So what is the actual, like as a sexual type, I connect very easily to the sense of like being unchoosable, right? Like being unattractive, or like a partner secretly longing for or wanting, or, you know, going over fantasy with or memories with somebody else and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, and it's all this like scarcity around being chosen. But what is like the fear or the quality or the suffering in social, like you see like at large? Like, it feels to me like, you know, and we've talked about this, but you know, most people, like even good friends, don't even seem to be that good of friends. You know, they don't seem to be like that, like they don't seem to like know how to be close to each other or something, or like get past the barrier of like we like to drink together or something like that. And so I'm curious, like there's a sense of being attacked socially, but then there's like the kind of like the more of this milieu of social suffering that's out there.
I think to kind of go off of what everyone's saying, like social is really like a vulnerable thing, because it kind of has to do with your acceptance and if you belong. And I think it can look really different depending on your type, but also like the family you were raised in can also influence the way that you find or try to feel acceptance and belonging. And so like that can cause a lot of pain around people. So like I kind of in our dream episodes we talk about social is where the realm of shadows live. So everything you're talking about with like people trying to pull other people down and like whatever, like that's all just shadow projection. That's like a quality in themselves they're not willing to own, so they have to like double down on putting it into the shadow, like because that's not me, and I have set up the picture of myself, and anything that challenges that needs to be destroyed, essentially. So you're going to go to great lengths to do that. And that's all in the social realm, because then that, like, wherever you put yourself versus other, quote unquote, like that's going to determine if you feel accepted and you feel like you belong, if that made sense.
Yeah, I mean, so
perfect sense.
So wait, one of the things, because I think I understand what you mean by projecting shadow, but like for people, so what you're kind of talking about is that social is the instinct that links the inner emotional life to the outer, and a sense of identity to the outer world. And so that people are basically taking their inner world and projecting it onto the outer world through the social instinct and trying to annihilate the parts of themselves that are out there that don't abide by how they want to be or how they see themselves or something like that.
Here's one piece I'll add to that is, like I said it before, to me, personality is kind of ruled, quote unquote, by the social instinct. So that's your self-image. So then you're flashing, let's say, self-images to people with your personality all the time, the image that you want them to see. So there's what brings in what you're talking about, Kristen, with the shadow, right? Because you can't, just being all light or something is not realistic.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That's where it gets really complicated, because everyone's shadows are going to look different. Like, depending on how you were raised, depending on your type, they're all going to look different. And they're all going to play different roles that will conjure up a lot of different kinds of pain. So that's why, like, coming back from the zone, in my experience, like, it was kind of the almost, I mean, guess being triple attachment and whatever, like, it was especially like, oh, wow, people can see you and, like, you know, connect with you in a way that you've kind of always wanted. And so going like back into the world, which is in my world, a lot of self-parasocials, like instead of, because I'm usually getting frustrated around people a lot, like, why aren't they opening up? Like, why aren't they being vulnerable? And it kind of made me realize, like, that self-pres wall, at least, like, that's there for a reason. Like, there is a lot of pain and grief in social that, like, that's that whole idea of, like, some people are just self-pres, like, there's like like, I kind of understand that, because there's a lot of grief in it. Like, even in social blinds, there's a lot of grief in that. Like, if you haven't been able to be vulnerable in front of someone, and, like, I think why it's vulnerable is because you want to be accepted, like, or you want someone to make you feel like you belong, and there's a lot of risk in doing that. That's really vulnerable. So it's like, it kind of made me realize, like, oh, this is why people don't do this normally, because you never know what kind of risk you're taking.
Yeah.
Even social dominance, and that's the thing, like, social ego stuff is just a way to kind of, like, you just keep interacting with the projection, like, you keep interacting with the shadow, and because that's what you think is going to, the external thing for every instinct is going to get you the internal feeling. But with social dominance, like, they're not realizing that the external thing is just the projection of the internal feeling, essentially. So that's why that can be a whole mess, because they're not relating to you. They're relating to the thing that they're trying to get or push away, essentially.
Yeah, one of the things that comes to mind is, like, you know, I can't be too specific, but, like, there was somebody who I had a connection with or something like that, and as soon as I, like, just, this person was always very, like, affirming of our, like, familial connection. And then as soon as my attention was not able to go to this person, they, like, absolutely, like, dropped me in a way that it wasn't just like they stopped being my friend, like it actually put me at other kinds of risk. And it was like such a like mindfuck shock, you know? It was like it was so weird because it was like something about like attention or social currency or something like that. There's something, it's connecting somehow emotionally to what you're saying, but I'm having a hard time putting it together. But like that thing about like most people living in a external world that is just pure projection representation of their inner world and not actually having any interface with another human being. I don't know, there's something there that is really interesting. This like social objectification thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's painful because especially when you think you're getting the real thing where you're communing with somebody like in a deeper way, and then you find out whether they drop you because something socially happened to you and your reputation is like not as solid, or maybe they elevated in some way and that connection doesn't mean it as much, or maybe they got a new job and you were just like a distraction or whatever. Yeah, that causes a bunch of shame and like heartbreak and all this stuff, because it's like I gave you my heart, like, and I thought I was talking to your heart, but actually this is fucking garbage and it was a waste of time. I wish I never fucking met you. Like there's a lot of like, I don't know, dark feelings that come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed a certain phenomenon that's happened in my life, but like I've observed in other people's lives, where some people will get another person, like a certain kind of intimacy with another person. And at that point, they will try to, they will somehow fuck with that. It's like, it's hard to explain, especially trying to be, like, not too specific about anything, you know, on the podcast. But, like, it's like a certain level of, like, connection or intimacy is achieved. And some people, it's like a light goes on to, like, either sabotage it or fuck with it. It's like somebody gets that point where they're really exposed. And then it's like, oh, it's like now it's time to snuff it out or something like that. You know what I'm talking about? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And that could be family stuff. Like, and that's, you know, with really, really toxic family, like the way that you're brought up, if that was a dynamic in a family, like that's what you're going to think is, it's like the attachment styles kind of, you know,
interesting. Yeah.
Like that's why I think social is just there's so much to it. Because all of that, like, history is involved with it. Like, self-pres can be the same as well, or sexual, obviously. But with social, it's, like, so much more going to be involved because day-to-day you're running into it, and day-to-day you're running into people, or not, and that's even saying something. Like, you know, there's so much history and depth to that.
Yeah, no, it is a wider sphere. It's more multi-dimensional somehow, social.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like because we're social animals, sexual and self-pres also have social consequences. So it's almost like sexual for the sake of social, or self-pres for the sake of social. So somebody like trying to sleep with this person because it gives them social clout. It's like it's like there's a, you know, here's, you know, self-pres got this much of the pie and sexual is this much of the pie. I don't know. It's all, you know what I'm trying to say? It's like there's a whole other thing.
Yeah,
I'm social blind.
It's all social.
I think part of how I've always seen social, especially as distilled from self-pres and from sexual, is just like the image of like a kid, just like a little kid just standing out in the cold and hoping that you will take him in. You know, just hoping that you get taken in. Like, it's kind of like a herd mentality, not in like everybody thinks the same, but this is like, it's family, or at least that's how I have always seen social. Is like, this is your family, either that you were born into or that you were chosen. These are the people that you are trying to cultivate in order to have a group that will look out for you. You know, it's just like more, I don't want to say more eyes or more resource, but it is kind of like that. Like, you just have a wider network for your own, I don't know, for your own well-being.
Or it's even just like, it's just a human being too. Like, and that's why like the shadow can just be projected. Like, the more you generalize a person, you know, through different shadows, and this is for social for anywhere in your stacking, you can easily generalize groups of people or just one kind of person or whatever, like you're just demonizing them to the point where their humanity is like totally stripped, and they are that kid left out in the cold to just die, you know?
Totally. Yeah, you're just trying to be social is just trying to be accepted. It's just trying to find its own family, and then it gets distorted in all of these different ways that it makes it, at least to me and in my life, it has felt like almost impossible. Like I feel like I can get through the first couple of layers and that can stick around for a while, but then there's this eventual realization of like, oh, we were only here for each other for a time, and it didn't actually like last. Or like years go by and you realize that the connection has kind of like faded and that it was never really anything, like those kinds of experiences. Yeah, like, no, that's it. Go ahead.
Well, when I like doing the research or the biological research for my book, like was a big mindfuck for me because I just didn't. There were things I just didn't think about what it means to be human and how humans are organized. And how humans are is so antithetical to the narratives our culture says about what a human being is. And so one of those things that really struck me was how basically people have, in a sense, open-ended nervous systems that are filled in and regulated by other people. Like we're not as independent as we view each other. And yet we're all kind of operating, at least like in this culture, with this view of sort of autonomous, striving individuals, and and how also like how fucking completely sensitive our nervous systems are, and how affected by things our nervous systems are, which is also against this sort of false individualist thing. And so it's kind of it's interesting because especially all the instincts are kind of fucked up and sick, but there's like a real like social disease, you know what I mean? Like I kind of feel like with the other instincts, the like solutions are a little more clear, you know what I mean? But there's a whole thing about personhood and interpersonhood, and then like, all right, so you're not just having to work on yourself, but like like, all right, let's say like you're in a toxic relationship, you can work on yourself, and at a certain point that person's got to work too. And even if they work, it might not work out. And if they don't work on themselves, you might have to just like fucking leave that thing. But it's a lot more complicated than that. So it's like it's a really fucking weird shit happening.
And like imagine that complex nervous system, right? And now put it in one house with the same people that you will see for 18 plus years. And then shift them into like a couple of different school districts where all of those people came from individual houses without any communities. This is so social, I'm sorry, but
it's perfect. That's perfect.
Like, and now you're expecting them all to interact with each other when they've just come out of like these toxic, or even if they're a normal family, you're not getting any other like perspective or sense of community or something like that. And then you're expecting them all to be able to be friends and connect. Like, no wonder that their relationships are shallow, because they don't know what depth of connection actually feels like, because they only know one thing.
I always notice after the zones that there's like a level of relaxation that I feel that it's almost like a release of my nervous system, and I'm like, man, I feel really loose and relaxed. And I was like, this last zone, I was like, how can I tap into this, but or without like every 4 months or whatever. But there was something that Courtney said that struck me, that this is the way humans regulated each other before. Like you had to be like the way animals are on top of each other, and like being in connection physically with other people and having depth of connection and intimacy, that is healing. And on a body level, as a body type, that's something I notice acutely after every zone, that even just hanging out with a friend, how much better I feel, how much more relaxed I feel. So there's something, it's really important way that we regulate ourselves through other people. So if you don't have anyone that you can connect with deeply, how horrible must your life be?
Yeah.
Totally. It's true. It's true. I mean, it's like it's like if you give negative social to somebody, you could really just take them down to death, honestly. Yes. And if you give them positive social, you can like save them from insanity and death. You know, you could breathe so much life into them. This entire conversation reminds me of the story of a woman who came here as a refugee, and she was diagnosed with like 3 different mental disorders, like psychosis and OCD and every single thing that you could think of. And she kept on going in and out of hospitals. And her social worker was completely like at wit's end, and she sent her to like a third cousin or whatever. Her third cousin said, "I can't have you staying at our house because you're just such a destructive force, and I don't want you to be around my kids." Which, just take that in, like how painful that is. Damn. You're new to a country and somebody says that to you. But she said, I'll drop you off at a hotel. And this hotel happened to have a bunch of people from her same culture, like Somali people, right? And she got better in 3 days. Like she said, I couldn't sleep before. I was afraid. I felt like there was things coming out of my closet and things that wanted to kill me. And then I just leave my door open a crack and I hear everyone else walking and it's fine. And she goes downstairs every day for breakfast, and she talks to like all the people at the hotel. And yeah, she's like a little bit weird, you know, or off, but they like her and they bring her gifts. And you know, her social worker said, "We'll just pay for this hotel. Like she can just stay here for good." I think she's found her place. Like, and like tears welled up in her eyes. And that's what I think of social. Like that's how strong social is. It could fucking save you from the brink. And I can't think of a huge transformation like that could be from sexual or self-pres. Like everything, your health, your body, your mind, you know, emotions.
That's really, really interesting, because what it makes me think of is, you know, kind of both on both your point and Emika's point is like, and this is like a thing for me is, since we're not stuck in a Airbnb in Chicago together, or you know whatever sort of circumstance was the way the environment that our ancestors evolved in, that their nervous systems adapted within, that being around people that are not just like the family that you're stuck with, just being around people that like are actually like kind of good for you, like you kind of need an excuse or a reason. Like you need to be doing something, you know what I mean? Like, because we're not just around each other. So we're like, you know, we all like have this interest in the Enneagram, which is great. But it's like, you know, but then sometimes I'll be with even you guys and I'll be like, all right, I don't know why they'd want me around. You know what I mean? Like I have to like, what's my value add here? Because, and so then I can get into this, like, you know, and I'm an image type too, but it's like this, like, all right, well, what am I, you know, normally I'm pretty good at like, just like not entertaining those thoughts or whatever, but I'm still like, I can't really like see myself in a social way. So then it's like there, you know, I think that brings a lot of insecurity for people in general. You know what I mean? Like, because when I step out of it, that kind of like, why would anybody want to hang out with me? When I just think about myself, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of things I like about myself. I like my art. I like my book. You know, like I can kind of list it off. But then when it comes to add value in other people's eyes, like it's not there for me. So, like, I feel what I'm saying is I feel like, well, like, that's an interesting thing, because I can feel good about myself as my own being, like as my own person, and like, and I like to spend time with myself and stuff like that. But then there's kind of a blankness of what's my like excuse or token or thing I have to pay to like be involved. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
I think that's the problem with social, though, is the problem that, especially this, I mean, this is going to be present in like almost every family, is that you think you have to be transactional. And the whole point of social in its like core essence is that you're accepted however you show up. Yeah. Like you don't need to give anything to be able to receive something from someone, to connect with someone, stuff like that. That like, I think that unconditional love is sort of in the social instinct that is not expressed in a lot of social settings or friendships or whatever.
So I don't mean to hijack this conversation. Like y'all can fucking
go ahead,
do whatever. Yeah. But you know, so like that's really interesting, the sense of like love and beingness. And then we were also talking though about like danger before. And so there's an interesting thing there, because like this thing about like the unconditional love and acceptance, this like thing that's there. At the same time, this like sense of danger, and it's made me think about you know, like a lot of people, like, you know, like some of y'all, like we come in through getting to know each other through like, you know, like talking online, and then we meet up at zones and we're sort of feeling each other out, and then we're like, oh yeah, we can relax with this person. So, but there's a lot of people, like even before the zones, that we're trying to kind of like get in, and there's this sense that we've had to adopt of being like protective in certain ways, but also still letting ourselves be open in other ways. And so I guess what I'm getting at is like this sense of owning your own social danger, like that each one of us is like socially dangerous to other people. I think is like a really important thing, because like I've seen a lot of people try to be like over enthusiastic to like get in, and then they just like they're wanting to be accepted and they're whatever, and they just like fuck themselves over and implode right in front of us real fast. And I'm not just talking about with us, but like in general, I think it's like people wanting to be connected will start to not own how fucking, you know, quote unquote socially dangerous they can be, like because they're insecure, because they want to use other people, because they want to put other people down, whatever it might be, or to like get in some sensitive information and then be like, I have sensitive information, and spread it. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, it's all shadow stuff. Like they're projecting something onto another group. Like they're going to give me something, but it's not the people themselves. So like anytime they're interacting, they're not actually interacting with you. But that's what sucks is because you don't know. You really you kind of can't know, because you're probably relating to them in a way that's some sort of shadow. Like, and that's where like the depth of the shadow and how much of a charge it has over you is what's really important. And you're only going to know that if you become more aware of that playing out. And most people don't. We don't have that kind of like guidance anywhere to learn that about yourself. Yeah.
I think we sort of had a awakening about this. This podcast anyway gave us a social awakening that people were using us as social objects. So I think it was 2 years ago, 2021, where people had a reaction to the soul intercourse episodes, and it was this wake up, like the concept of a parasocial relationship was a huge deal to us. Like, I mean, I'd never really like that reality TV people or characters on a show become like real people, and people are getting into fights about them and arguments about them. There's a whole world that's created around relating to those people that they have no connection to, but they have connection to through a show. And it just blew up a whole bunch of realizations about attachment, but also just like how starved people are for connection, that this is the way that they project their inner world out through us as objects. And it becomes this sort of weird fangirl, fanboy thing that can happen, that we felt as like a social, being socially molested, you could say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What was the topic of the soul sex?
The soul intercourse, it was basically an
epic saga.
Yeah, like in terms of realizing the depth that one can experience through relational romantic connection, and basically not giving up on that intimacy or the potential for intimacy, preparing yourself for love. I think it just sort of I was
just going to say that I could see how it could be a parasocial thing, but I could also see how it ties into what Christian was saying and what John was saying about like recognizing yourself as a dangerous social entity or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where compatibility comes in, and like self-awareness, because what probably happened is that you were saying a bunch of stuff that would hurt people and obviously would get at their shadow, and all the memories of like times where they've let themselves down in relationships, or the things that they have as like constructs in their mind for what they can get or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so that probably was like an over the top tidal wave. And the social connection is that they've already deemed you as people that they're going to take advice from, and you know the Enneagram and da-da-da. And so I think maybe if you guys were social types or whatever, I think it is parasocial, but I also think it's just painful. That was one thing I wanted to say from earlier. Like we keep on saying like, oh, like people are trying to fuck with you, whatever. But no, sometimes people are just having authentic reactions of like like what the fuck and terrible emotions coming through, you know?
Okay.
So I don't know if everything I said made sense, but
No,
I don't.
totally.
yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I have something. I don't want to interrupt you if you got something, Emeka.
No, I was just gonna say that it's okay, like what she's saying, that was triggering for a lot of people. It made people feel bad because it made them realize the shallowness of their romantic connections. And here I am, this shadow boy, social blind, talking about, hey, don't give up on love. So it's like fuck you, man.
Yeah.
Thing.
And another thing that Ikram was saying, it was social compatibility. So like we were talking in those episodes about compatibility, and we were emphasizing the sexual instinct, but it was like sexual, social, and heart all together.
Yeah.
And it was like what it means to like be with somebody that's not just basically entertaining your instincts, but is actually connecting yourself to somebody. And part of that is, you bring up compatibility, and part of compatibility is exclusion, right? Like, and from a sexual point of view, you just recognize like you're gonna have compatibility with some people, and you're gonna be excluded with other people, and that's just fine. But sometimes I think maybe from a social lens, it's painful to recognize that even if you like these people or this group or these ideas, you might not actually be compatible with them. Like you might not belong to these things. Like they're liking something and belonging with it are different.
Yeah.
And I think that might have been another thing, because like a lot of people turned like weirdly hateful, and I think that there was something there about like what it takes to connect. And I don't know, like that's you know what I'm saying?
That's a huge realization. I think I saw some weird things where after we started the podcast that I knew that I needed to stop posting in the group, because I recognized that if I would comment or respond to someone in a sort of any sort of pushback way, people would just end up leaving the group immediately. And I think someone explained it that it's this, they're hit with the realization that this podcast that I like or this group that I like, that they might not actually feel the same way about me that I feel about them. Like they realize they're hit that, they're not going to like me. He might not even like me as a person. So they've built up this relationship already. And so if I say something or I express something on a podcast that feels invalidating to them, it feels like a rejection, which brings up these emotions where fuck you. So they're kind of reacting to the sense of rejection that they're feeling from listening to what we've said.
Yeah.
So, dear listeners, I just want to assure you that we don't like you and we are rejecting you.
Yes. If you were wondering.
If you're wondering.
You guys are social blind. Watch nobody ever fucking post in the group again. It's scary. The group is actually kind of a scary social space, because there's a lot of people who are like super like, I don't know if it's like they're emulating you or because you guys are attracting them, whatever, because of the podcast, but it's like people are super abrasive. That was the thing I realized. When I joined, I'm like,
wait, what? Why would they be that way?
I'm like, kind of like the group doesn't have a lot of text-based, posts or anything like that, which are the harder posts to make if you're the person posting, because you're opening yourself up for whatever. And so, yeah. I think you guys should be nicer to the listeners as a positive type.
I'll just post.
Realize how nice we're being already.
I'll just post idea. You're wrong with a lot of smiley faces. And
I
hearts.
don't feel like you get the listeners. That's my 7 frustration.
Trying really hard to be nice. Like we're actually really mean people that have become nicer because of this podcast.
Well, that's part of what you can do on this episode of Ikram, is you can teach us about the listeners. Right now.
They should save it for the roast. Save it for the roast episode that they're doing next.
Oh yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun.
Alexandra, you had some point you were going to make earlier before everybody rudely interjected. It's probably gone now. But
it is way gone.
Yeah.
Way gone. Way gone.
I was just
I'll say just
social here.
Thank you.
Social too.
Well, just as a quick thing with the parasocial thing, part of that also is that like the relationship is one directional for a long time. So they've already decided, listeners have already decided that they've accepted you. They've already like signed on to be your family in certain ways. Right. And so then when there's action that says, no, I don't accept you back. Yeah. It feels like they're being excluded from like they're being pushed out of a family they didn't realize they hadn't been a part of yet.
Oh, interesting.
Something like that.
Like parasocial relationships, when I think about them, it's a part of kind of like the light shadow, like qualities that you don't think you can own. So like you guys plus other even like TV shows, why people get obsessed with characters and stuff. Like it's all these qualities that people, listeners, watchers, whatever, just have completely disowned. And so they think that like you become the placeholder, like that's my source of this quality that I find really attractive and desirable. And so when that thing, like some kind of disillusionment happens where that thing turns against me, that was my only source, that quality, because I'm not learning to integrate that quality myself. So it's like I become angry because it's just a reminder that I can't have that quality within me. It's unobtainable in a way, if that makes sense. I think that's why that culture is so popular. Like you think of like fan fiction and stuff like that. Like it's just playing with these qualities that people are kind of like, it's kind of like has to be alive in there in them somewhere, but it's still an external thing. They're not letting it be an internal, like I can have this quality as well.
So what do you say to, what does it say about someone to the degree that they're having these projections or not? Like, you know, I what I was trying to understand is like, why is it this something that I do? Or
why me?
I don't do this and I can't relate to it and I can't find it. And I'm not trying to say that I'm better because I don't, but I'm trying to understand, like, what does it say about someone that they're doing this with, you know, external characters to such a degree?
Connection to self.
I was going to say, I mean, based on our current climate here in our culture, like you're at home, you're at home with the same people, you go to work, see the same people, like you start to live in a alternate kind of world of connection that doesn't kind of exist. And they're qualities that you're not expressing. Like if people aren't very like, it's almost its own form of creativity for people. And if you're not expressing creativity in any other kind of way, like that is still a creative form, but it's also, it can be damaging and you don't realize that. Do you know what I mean?
It kind of refers back to that sort of self-regulating thing that we were talking about earlier. You know, when you're in a nuclear family, 2 parents, 1 parent, and a sibling or 2. Yeah,
like your environment,
you need diversity.
Yes, and so with our culture now, diversity is only accessed in a kind of like unobtainable way. Like I either listen to it or I watch it. I'm not engaging with it. So then, you know, when you do actually engage, that's why you have like crazy fans for celebrities and stuff. And they become like, we've built this culture around obsession with people because it's all these bright, shiny qualities that you're not accessing in any other kind of creative way. So when you get to see that in person, like, you're going to have kind of an identity crisis because now you start to realize these people are just people and they can hurt you and they can, you know, they might not accept you and they might not see you in the way that you think they're seeing you because you have like, you've been playing with this projection of them the whole time.
Interesting. That like that thing about characters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And why people like watch a bunch of TV and it's like trying to get that it's trying to like activate like the overlap of social and psyche, you know, and speaking of which, yesterday I found online this girl who's autistic who has a shrine to a character called Randy who's like the father of one of the South Park kids. And it's like a full room shrine dedicated, like covered to this one character, and you know, it's like, you know, there's a lot of people online that are like, oh, I'm autistic or whatever. It's like that's autistic. Like Google it, it's crazy. Anyway, you know, that's super interesting. This like, like I've always liked characters. You know, like I love Wolverine and all this stuff, and like I've always loved the X-Men and stuff like this, like that, and it's. That was like my social instinct or something growing up is like reading comics and stuff like that. I don't know. It's really interesting.
Yeah, there's like really strong like archetypes built in people. And so that's kind of what the maybe like a light shadow or the golden shadow would be. Like it's this archetype of that's hiding in you that the other person sees. And it's something, that's why you kind of can't predict who's gonna, you know, kind of fall in love with what archetype, but you become that thing. And it's like they're trying to get it outside of themselves instead of a creative way to cultivate it inside of themselves. So that's why I think like we're kind of also just kind of like starving for creativity, I think, just as people in general. And so that kind of becomes a way, these characters become a way for people to still feel creatively involved and connected and accepted in some kind of way, because that character or the person, because you guys are just people, becomes like, that's, you're it, and they want it, like that kind of thing.
Well, I think that's like you know, with stuff like QAnon, you know, or these kinds of things, like I think it's the same deal where you know, if I lived in a pre-agrarian, you know, 10,000 BC thing, I would be around people that were like activating and animating me on different psychological levels. I mean, part of what was interesting about being in the zone was knowing each other's types so well, so that when we were all doing each other's type, it was just like, it was just funny. You know, it wasn't even annoying. It was just like all the nines were heavy under blankies and Ikram was converting into a 9. And, you know, David got angry at the sun. Emeka was not sharing the music. I don't know what I was doing, but when you guys roasted me, that was very funny. And so it's like, we're all just like doing our types. And so, you know, I feel like these, like I have a friend who he's got some stuff going on and he goes in and out of like entertaining different far right ideologies, and he like kind of comes out of it. And you know, he's had a lot of trauma in his life, like really severe stuff. So I like have some grace for him because of his whatever. But I kind of feel like it's that, like he's trying to be a character in a story, to be activated, but he's like really isolated in a certain way, and he's really kind of stuck in a certain part of his life. And he's a social type also, and he gets involved. He's not a QAnon guy, but it's like kind of stuff that's not too far away from that, where it's like, this thing's happening and I got to be like a warrior, and he's like posting stuff about being some kind of like warrior type, and it's like, dude, you're just like a family guy, you know, just like chill. I have some other stuff I want to ask about, unless you had some things to add to that kind of stream. But I want to hear from, so we got 3 fucking social types here. But we haven't heard much of your personal experiences of social pain. And I at least am very attuned to one of my social types here. And I can see, you know, you have a look on your face, baby. I don't know if like something's coming up or there's something there, but I can feel your energy.
Not right now.
Huh?
No, not right now. I mean, yes, probably, but nothing's coming up right. It's just been interesting to listen to everything, because these are a lot of takes I haven't heard before, and a lot of like, I guess in a lot of ways, like since coming into the Enneagram, since you guys have been the dominant voices, there's a lot of ways that I haven't been exposed to. This is going to sound so self-aggrandizing, but like I haven't been exposed to many people that can teach me about the social instinct. And so it's been really nice to just like listen to you guys and hear your experiences and your perspectives on it. Especially because, you know, these guys are social blind, and they're a lot of the like dominating teachers in this space. So to be exposed to new social intel it's been really nice to just like reflect on. So something will come up, but not right now.
Well, I was curious if anybody wanted to, like, I don't know, if there was a more personal way of speaking about the personal wounding and the personal instinct. You know what I'm saying? Like, without, you don't have to get, like, you tell a story or something, but just, like, yeah, like, what's your, I don't know, like, the way I talked about, like, the fear around not feeling chosen or all these other things that can happen, like, what's your personal experience of that?
Ikram mentioned earlier one of the conversations we had after the zone, where she went super deep into social pain, suffering, and I started crying. She started crying, and that made me start crying. And I'm not that kind of person usually. that would have that
You're not David.
Yeah.
Why did you make David cry?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
We need to hear
really-
what you told him
It
now.
was intense, yeah, and so, but at the same time, that's involves some specific people, and I don't know how much you want to do all of that if you want to, because I know it's getting into the shit.
I guess the overview and the thing that I found out and like realized when I was talking to David was like, I think I get how social sexual like makes me feel isolated in some sort of way, and how it's different from social self-pres in terms of like social self-pres. I know for a fact we're feeling the same amount of pain of just like how dry the planet is, but social self-pres feels like it's on kind of, you guys are like on a mountain, you know, like you're drawing, Kristen. Like you're a little bit dry. Like it's like nothing's touching you because you're protected. You've done a hike or whatever. And then I think with social sexual, it's just like I constantly am in situations where I'm like fucking burying my soul to people who don't give a fuck about me at all, like, and then finding out later. And it's just incredibly painful to the point where I was like, I just felt like after my aunt died and that friendship imploded, and then like, I just felt so done with people. I was fully in the Lyington 5. I was like, I'm not good for the world. I'm not like a part of it. I think people are going to hurt me, and I don't know how to protect myself in any sort of way. And I don't even know if I have anything to give them. I guess that entire situation when we were talking, David, was just like me, I don't know, just feeling into the deep hopelessness I had, that I was too much for the planet, and maybe I made other people unstable as well. And I would never, ever actually meet people, who saw me and didn't want anything from me and because I'm not even good at picking up when people, like I'm a social type, I'm still not good at picking up when people are projecting onto me or have like, ulterior motives. So when I met you guys, it actually just felt relaxed and normal and cool, and it made me feel really happy after everything I've been through. So yeah.
Kristen, it's your turn.
No.
I don't know what you're waiting for.
Tell us the worst thing.
Just
The
letting
worst.
it settle. Letting it settle.
Yeah, letting it settle.
Yeah, no.
To your
I mean, for me,
reputation.
it's just like so you know, Ikram, like
There's a lot. Yeah.
I wasn't
Yeah.
just being silent because it was. I didn't want you as a social type to feel like you did something awkward. So like, no, it was just
no. Yeah.
Just
Just
Yeah.
being
sitting
there
with
with
that.
you.
It was just
Yeah.
letting it be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
God bless. Thanks for letting me. Yeah, it was really bad. I'm like fully in my head right now, like not even a little bit close to my heart. But I think when I was talking to David that day, that was the first time that, with another human being, I was able to like get into my heart and talk about it. Before I would just do a tailspin, between 7 and 9, like, this is really fucked up. I can't believe all the ways that this is fucked up, and it's actually probably fine. And this shit happens to people all the time, like 9 dispersing. And then when I got to talking to David, I wasn't even expecting it. Like I fully dropped into my heart about like how badly that made me feel, even though it was obvious, but it made me feel extremely bad. So yeah.
There's an interesting, you mentioned something that I'm like relating to. And you can tell me if this was what you were saying or if not, or if, whatever. But there was something you were saying about how like you didn't realize like how badly it hurt you or that you like realized it. But okay, this is just going to be my like framing, I guess, like whatever. This is what is coming up for me and hearing you talk about that is that I have a lot of stories of like social heartbreak, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a way that it like took me a long time to recognize that it was pain.
Mm-hmm.
Because okay, how do I say this? Hang on. Yeah, there's a way that it took me a long time to recognize that it was pain, because it was also just like, I know that this is what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know that people can be dangerous. I know that people will pretend to be, and not that this is necessarily what happened to you, but like the people will pretend, or maybe, I don't know, the people will pretend to be in a personal space with you, or suddenly decide to discard that personal relationship that you guys have for something else. And that's just the lay of the land.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it took a long time for me to process that, like, oh, I'm actually hurt by this. Like, just because this is just like the way things work doesn't make it any easier for me. So I guess that's something that came up. I guess there's more, but
I mean, I think
wait for a second.
In the course of us being together, there's things that, like, you've known were bad or hurtful, but like it seems like you've seen their impact as much more deep or still alive or something like that. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
can you explain that a little more?
There have been things that like have hurt you that you like realizing like still hurt.
Oh,
and that hurt you a lot deeper and more than you even realized.
Yeah. I'm still trying to tease out like what was the framing that introduced me to the social sphere as like an independent person. You know, like I guess like a lot of what has happened for me. Sorry, I'm so emotional today.
It's okay, baby.
I guess a lot of what's happened to me since the meetup is like the recognition that is like how cynical I've been about the social space, or just like referring to it as like a game of like this is just how people work. Like I've been told many, many times that I'm very socially perceptive, and that comes from a place of being cynical, and it comes from a place of like seeing how people can be dangerous and seeing how people can capitalize on the personhood of other people and treat people's personhoods like territory to just take over, like a resource, just like property. And I think what this zone did for me was it put me, you know, like I've said many times at this point that something that was really strong for me at this zone was the realization that I didn't have anything to be worried about, and that ended up being the thing that made me suspicious, because I was so comfortable being on guard and like having to monitor things. And what that has done has also put me in contact with the ways that I have been avoiding intimacy from other people, and that I've been avoiding putting myself into intimate situations. Because it's like the water I don't know how to like trace this back to the root, whatever kind of like original object relational dynamics were there. I'm still trying to discover that, but it seems like the water I was just like born into was just like, be careful. And so learning how to turn off my guard is a whole new learning process. And another thing that's come out of this, like with my processing with Josh, is realizing that the tools that I have used to strengthen that cynicism in order to protect myself. I've used like looking down on people, kind of like judging people for this or for that, as just like ways to uphold a barrier to intimacy, because it's something you're supposed to protect yourself from. Yes, I think, I'm not sure where to go with that, but that's where a lot of my processing has been. That's a location where a lot of my processing has been when it comes to social pain, is realizing that like there's a lot of ways that I've just been distrustful, whatever the word is, within the social instinct, both because of ways that things were framed from the beginning, also, and then reinforced by like bad things that happened. And I think, John, you're the one that said an open nervous system or like a sensitive nervous system or something like that. That's what attachment theory is based off of. It's this idea that like when you get attached to someone, not in the object relational sense, but when you like accept somebody, you open up your nervous system to them. And so then your nervous system becomes activated when the attachment, you know, like when the connection feels threatened. And we develop different responses to that activation, I guess. And so, yeah, there's like this larger conversation. Okay, sorry I'm being so messy.
You're not, baby. It's good. It's all really good.
Emeka, you said something about being really relaxed after the zone. And I was really relaxed during it and definitely after it. But something about you saying that I guess, like just like brought attachment theory back up. That having good social regulation can add years onto your life and can, add to your nervous system and to what's the other thing? Your immune system. And can just give you a better quality of life. Like it's been shown over and over then that having, we kind of talked about this with the soul intercourse, that like choosing your partner is the most important decision you can make for your life, because it's like, especially in this like hyper individualized society, you're really over, what am I saying? You're over relying on one person to give you all of that regulation. And so there was something about this. So, like my relationship with John is wonderful and we get a lot of regulation from it. But I think he would agree with this in saying that like there was a more holistic sense of regulation, at least that I got from being around all of you. That just really brought up a lot for me. And as far as social goes, I keep using the word family with social because that's how that weekend felt.
Yeah.
Was just like, oh, I found people that I'm going to like be protective of and take care of. And that I feel like will take care of me too. Sorry.
It's beautiful, baby.
I think another thing with this too is, I don't remember the framing of a lot of this, but I think this was in the parasocial conversation, that there's this idea of basically like imprinting on characters, on archetypes and stuff like that. I think one of the ways social can get distorted is that because we do that, we then try to characterize ourselves to social spaces. Which means we're only going to be related to very, very extremely incompletely. And maybe this is like a Trifix thing for me, but then when you get related to in a positive way for that incomplete caricature that you've developed, I don't know, there's just like a larger sense of loneliness that comes because the rest of you you just have to leave the rest of you behind. Yeah, another thing that's come up for me too is like I bet a lot of people really struggle with self-worth around that. I know that I do. With this idea of having to stay on guard or having to only be related to in a very specific way. For me, it has meant that a lot of me has been undeveloped, which means that I have not been able to like share those parts of myself with other people in a way that will like reinforce a sense of self-worth. And I'm not even sure if that's like how it works, but that's just like another conversation I've been kind of having with myself. Okay, somebody else go.
Well, I mean, mine's sort of related, but sort of opposite. And we've talked about this. That for me, like my role has like I really took on a social role my whole life. So I haven't had groups of friends really. Like, like I've made friends, but like I've never was involved in like a large group of people. Even like this is probably the largest group I've ever involved myself with. So I've kind of kept to myself a lot, but I think it's because when I do involve myself with other people, whether it be friends or group or whatever, like I invest a lot into it. And so I kind of took on the social role or the social self-pres role because it is very dry. But
I didn't mean it in that way. Like on a mountain.
No, totally get it. No, I get it. I don't hike that much, but I do.
Oh my God.
I have always taken on the social role as the therapist. Including in my family. Like it started in my family. And that is just probably where I have then felt like I was being accepted and I belonged, as if I played the therapist for everybody, or the mother. Like I've been the mother and the therapist for everyone. And I guess that's partially OPS typing as well of like so that's kind of what I've always like felt comfortable with. But there's this aspect, and my roommate has brought this up to me. I talk about her a lot because, of course, like, you know, we've been friends since like 8th grade. So biggest social connection, you know, that kind of thing. That she had said to me after talking about stuff in the zone that she's like, you know, Kristen, I have always been pissed off that people have never really recognized you for what you can contribute and like who you are in that way, like what you're, that inner world essentially that I'm always in. And I use it when I'm in like a therapy mode with people that like let me use all of my resources and energy to help you, and to like I get invested into their life. And so that's kind of my own way of self-forgetting, is like, let me forget about me because I'm now in your world. And when it's, I'm giving that to people that don't really care, I guess, you know, like not even just friends, but like, you know, my involvement with teachers and with professors when I was in college, like all this stuff that I would try to like show myself to, that social kind of vulnerability, like, oh, is this safe to like kind of let you into my world essentially? It was completely overlooked, like in every aspect of my life essentially. Like every once in a while I'd get something and then it would kind of just like slip away, or I'd, you know, move on to the next thing, whatever. So I think I was one of the ones who cried and I hated every second of it. Because like it's easy for me to cry with other people, like when they're experiencing something, because it is that energy of like, I'm in your world when you're telling me about something, like I'm right there with you, which is why like mothering has come so kind of, or therapy has come so naturally to me, because it's like I am in what you are describing me to, but I have not had other people do that for me. Like never have I talked about my problems or things that I've struggled with, especially in the moment, because social self-pres is like, I don't want to be messy. I don't want to be raw. So like, it was Josh. Josh decided to be the mother figure for me and said things
Mother Josh
said things that like just I didn't even realize that was at play in that moment, that it's like I have not allowed myself to be like, I guess, seen and mothered or cared for in that way. And like everyone here recognizing the things that I've done as something important, and like it's kind of making me see too that the things that I'm like offering are also me, rather than just oh, here's the thing for you, and then all, you know, with self-pres social, it's all like, oh, thanks for this tool, okay, bye. It's like, oh, these things are who I am too, like they come from my inner world, and that has not been recognized in the way that I think it has here. So that kind of, I feel like each one of us came in with something going on that we weren't quite sure was lingering. So for it at the zone to kind of all like happen at once, and we weren't putting it on each other, because it was kind of like just a pain that was existing, and it was seen essentially in whatever way that is, non-intentionally. And so to me, it's like bringing up a lot of like, wow, I do invest a lot of energy where it probably shouldn't be, because it's like not being either cared for, recognized, or like it is kind of my own way of self-forgetting. So like this is the kind of work that actually makes me be like, oh my God, like where have I been my whole life? Like like this is where I am, and this is where I kind of always have been, but I kept forgetting. So I think that's kind of what everything has cultivated for me, in the cleanest way, no crying possible.
Yeah, of course.
Because I have got my barrier too, but yeah, that's I think that's kind of the gist of my story, social.
Well, this has been good.
Yeah,
I think it's gonna provide a lot of texture to a lot of people's experience, like both in terms of mirroring the different kinds of pain and longing people have, but also like I think it's like naming a territory that like everybody's involved with but hasn't really given it texture to, hasn't given real nuance to. And I mean, I feel like this kind of social just like dysfunction and pain and stuff like that and longing is like very universal, but it's not really fully looked at in the eye, especially because I think you'd have to admit a lot of stuff about like how you feel about your life and yourself and other people and the relationships you've got. And also, Alexander, the way you put it is like, well, this is what it is. Like, we kind of do have a collective, like, this is the way the world is, so better just, adjust to it in the best whatever way or settle with it or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my experience with that idea was just like, this is something you can't take personally because it's just it's just how nature works. Mm-hmm. And so then to find out of like, oh, I have taken it personally and it should be taken, and like the heart is personal, whether you will it to be or not. Has been an interesting kind of excavation process.
Yeah, and in the future, it might be interesting to get more, because I get this question all the time, what's the difference between the social instinct and the heart center? Mm-hmm. And it might be really interesting to get more into detail about how those things link up and how they're different. Because sometimes as a social blind, like I can go on and on about heart, but then sometimes like the difference with heart and social, it's like I can feel it, but it's like, identity. Like we talked a lot about identity in relation to social. Mm-hmm. And then there's identity in relation to heart center and how are those connected and blah, 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 blah. So, and self-image and things like that.
It's interesting. Go ahead.
There's a lot here in terms of trying to better understand social that you guys have said about it's like how you project an inner eye onto someone else and stuff about like acceptance. That's all kind of like, all right, I need to try to find those concepts within myself. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested to explore that, see if we can, because with the sexual, we've been able to find some terms that maybe help people get at it a little bit better with polarity and tension and things like that. And I'm hoping to see if I can figure out new ways of looking at social that'll make it land better for me.
Yeah, I'd be super down to keep this conversation going with you guys. I think just, having different facets to pull from and explore and just different perspectives to share. I just kind of want to play blast with you guys about it so I can just understand it better.
You're getting at something that is just an observation that comes up for me, and it's come up before from other episodes of the pod where we've had social types on, and that is that there's a way that like self-pres and sexual kind of have almost a dead end quality, whereas like social, you bring social in and it's almost elementally this thing could just keep going forever. Yeah. And it's actual, it's like, oh yeah, conversations, you know what I mean? It's like, and people and all these angles, and it's so much more sort of hyper 3-dimensional or 4-dimensional or something. Yeah. And it brings in that spirit almost at the level for me at the like elemental physics of what's happening in the conversation or in our bodies or something.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it feels different.
Yeah. I mean, those Bava Chakra episodes, the one with Joseph and Alexandra on social, that's like one of my top favorite ones because it's like, oh yeah, conversation. That's some social types going. Yeah.
Yeah, versus the ones where it's just me, you, and John. That's a completely different vibe. You're in some swamp water.
Swamp City. Yeah.
Or that one that me and Emeka did.
Yeah, sometimes with social blind conversations, it's really just like taking turns. Quotes. Yeah.
Lecture.
It's really just taking turns saying whatever thought you hadn't finished yet. Like there's not a lot of thinking.
It's like shooting like in separate yards, like with a fence between us, but shooting Roman candles at each other.
or the way I described it one time is it's like each of us like, okay, I'm stepping forward, I'm going to say my thing, and then I'm going to step back. Like it's just totally not ping-ponging, you know? It's like, okay, I said my part, I'm out.
Or it'll be like, it doesn't feel like communicative because it's like maybe I'm triggered, or I'm provoked by something John says or whatever. I'm provoked by, and I fixate on this like juicy part, and I make that a whole thing, and so I'm not really communicating. I mean, this is one of the things that hit me after the zone is the huge difference between sexual instinct, chemistry, and getting high off of that versus what this social intimacy is. And just the recognition that I've never been in a romantic, well, maybe one, where I felt that level of, being seen and being that sort of quality intimacy. And it was like a really sad realization that in a way that being social blind, that I've sort of set up scenarios where in order to experience the chemistry that I want, I have to sort of disown the possibility of that level of intimacy, almost to guarantee that it doesn't happen because I want to go so far in the other direction. And just like recognizing that those two things can exist and they don't have to be at odds with each other. And it's actually better for me to seek the real intimacy first before getting, into this sort of like swamp, attraction bullshit that seems so nice and sizzly, but it's like you're not a person in here. You're just at a whorehouse, just getting off.
It's reptilian. It's reptilian without the social instinct.
Sometimes you get lucky and you find the heart connection, and then you find the whorehouse inside.
You bring out the whorehouse in somebody else.
This is sexual self-res 4 again.
So maybe from these we had soul intercourse, now we're having like soul communism or something like that. Is the next.
There's something in there, yeah. Well, Emeka, I'll say watching you that weekend was really interesting too, because I felt you just like soften over time, and you came in already soft and kind of like not soft, maybe is not the word, but like relaxed. But I watched you like significantly soften over time to the point where like the very last, and you can choose to keep this in or not, but
depending on how vulnerable you want to be,
right?
Which is not. I'm just kidding.
To the point where the very, very, very last morning where we were all just talking and we were processing with Josh and whatever. I think this came before Josh's big processing thing with all the girls. You just like came over. You clearly still have... Never mind. I'm not going to say that part. You come over and you're kind of tired. Well, I was going to say you still have drugs in your system, so whatever.
Giselle Perez doesn't want to say that part.
Yeah. You come over, you're like really sleepy, and I can't remember who you go up to, but you like looked at either Ikram or Kristen, and you're just like, oh my God, I haven't hugged you yet.
It was me.
Hugged them.
It was me.
What the fuck is going on here? This just
the world is changing.
Sweet social intimacy that he's like reaching for is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I call Alexandra a glowy 9, but we had a glowy 8 that morning.
Totally did.
I felt so happy. I was I was like, I could just die. This could be my last weekend on earth. Like I there's nothing else that I want more than what just happened, and that's the happiest I felt in a very, very long time.
Yeah, totally. So I guess one of the last things that comes up for me too is like something that was really powerful for me was this idea that there could be people that already love and care about you without needing anything from you. Like the adage, I don't know if it's an adage or whatever, but the idea of like come as you are is, I think, social in its most pure form. And the whole weekend seemed like it was in that space. Everybody just come as they are, and they'll be taken care of and looked after and loved and shared with. And I just have not been exposed to that really before you guys. So that was very special for me.
All right, well, this is a good fucking full deal.
All right.
Let's
get out of here.
All right. Yeah, we'll probably do follow-ups with this shit.
All right, so next week, you guys are coming back to roast us.
Everybody look at David.
Yeah, sounds good.
What was that?
David, you're
next week you're coming back to roast us.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, fools.
All right, guys.
Bye, guys.
This was great.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Talk to you later.
Okay.
Okay.